Okay, good evening. I'd like to call this public hearing to order, and I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Soltanic, who will explain the scope of this public hearing.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Soltanic. I'm chair of the Education Law Group for Fox Rothschild, and we've been solicitors for the school district since the formation of the Boyertown Area School District in the 1950s. The purpose of this hearing will be explained in a few seconds, but I believe it would be in order to introduce those individuals who are seated at the table today for the purposes of our stenographic record. And we have a court stenographer who, according to the State Department of Education procedures, will be codifying all of the verbal statements that are made at today's hearing. And our court stenographer is seated in the corner of this table and wearing the flowered outfit. It's important to note that if anybody is going to be making any public comments this evening, that gestures, nodding of the head, and if you are not clear in what you are articulating, will not be able to be recorded for the purposes of this proceeding. So I am just advising everyone to be advised of that situation. The second part, before I introduce the individuals at this table, is to note that this hearing is not, and I'm going to repeat, not primarily for board comment. In fact, it isn't for board comment because board members at their seats do not have microphones as they normally do at a school board meeting. This is primarily a meeting for the general public to articulate their views on the potential closure of the Pine Forge Elementary School after hearing a presentation of our district administration. The board will have an ample opportunity to deliberate these proceedings in accordance with law, which I'm going to go over in a few minutes. So with that in mind, I'm going to start introducing individuals at this table. On my far left and to your right is Brandon Foose. That's F-O-O-S-E, who is the board vice president. Board member Chris Nyman, N-E-I-M-A-N, who is a board member. David Lewis, a board member, that's L-E-W-I-S. Ruth Dieroff, board member, D-I-E-R-O-L-F. Then to the immediate right of the stenographer is Rebecca Klauser, who is both the board secretary and the chief business officer of this school district. Almost at the center of the table is Mr. Stephen Elsier. That's S-T-E-P-H-E-N-E-L-S-I-E-R, and he is the board president. And to his immediate right is Dr. Dana Bedden, who is the superintendent of schools and a non-voting member of the board. Obviously myself is the next person at the table. And then to my immediate right is board member Donna Usavage, U-S-A-V-A-G-E. And to her immediate right, board member Rod Boyer, and finally, board member Jill Dennon. Throughout the course of today's proceeding, members of the administrative team will be assisting Dr. Bedden in the delivery of the district's investigation of this issue and analysis of this matter through both a PowerPoint and individually set forth exhibits. I will get to the exhibits in a few minutes. As everyone knows today, the Boyertown School District has been investigating the possible closure of the Pine Forge Elementary School having an address of 8 Glendale Road, Boyertown, Pennsylvania. As I indicated, the purpose of the hearing Today is because of Section 13-1311A of the Public School Code of 1949, which provides in part, the Board of School Directors of any school district may, on account of the small number of pupils in attendance or the condition of the then existing school building, or for the purpose of better graduation and classification, or for other reasons, close any one or more of the public schools in its school district. As a result of that provision in the Public School Code, the school code has additional requirements which provides that the public hearing must be held prior to the closing of the school. Specifically, Section 7-780 of the Public School Code provides, quote, in the event of a permanent closing of a public school or substantially all of a school's facilities, the Board of School Directors shall hold a public hearing on the question not less than 3 months prior to the decision of the board relating to the closing of the school. That is what tonight's hearing is about. Notice of that hearing shall be given in a newspaper of general circulation. We have done that already, and I will go through that in the exhibits that will be made part of the record. In the school district at least 15 days prior to the date of such hearing. And judging by individuals who are here tonight, that notice has gone out. With respect to tonight's hearing, on July 23rd, 2019, this board voted on a resolution that instructed the district administration to hold a public hearing on the question of whether or not the district should close the Pine Ford Elementary School. A copy of that resolution is in the exhibit book. On July 25th, 2019, this hearing was advertised in the Reading Eagle. On July 26, 2019, this hearing was advertised in the Mercury and the Mercury Digital. And on August 1, 2019, this hearing was advertised in the Berksmont newspaper and Berksmont digital media. The verifications of these advertisements are also included in an exhibit book which I have given to the stenographer, which will be made part of tonight's record. As part of this hearing, the district administration will go over the rationale as to why it is being recommended that the Pine Forge Elementary School should be closed. In addition to notifying the general public regarding the closure hearing tonight, the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, which is the enabling law for the enactment of local subdivision, land development, and zoning ordinances that most of the municipalities, in fact, all of the municipalities in the school district must follow, includes a provision that arguably applies in connection with the closing of a public school. That code provides, quote, following the adoption of a comprehensive plan or any part thereof by any municipality or county governing body, any proposed action of the governing body of any public school district located within the municipality or county relating to the location, removal, sale, or lease of any school district structure or land shall be submitted to the municipal and county planning agencies for their recommendations at least 45 days prior to the execution of such proposed action by the governing body of such school district. Close quote. It is important to note that the district did provide this notification to the Douglas Township Planning Commission and the Berks County Planning Commission. However, while the district respects what the county and local planners may say, these bodies are purely advisory in nature and non-binding on the school board, and the district will take into account, but not be bound by the recommendations when the district ultimately votes on the school closure, not tonight, but at its November 26, 2019 board meeting, which is at least 90 days following tonight's meeting or hearing. So, as a matter of the hearing tonight is not going to involve the board voting up or down the closure of the Pine Forge Elementary School. Even if the board wanted to do that, they couldn't do that under state law. The purpose of this hearing tonight is most analogous to a legislative type of hearing where the board is going to listen to the testimony that you are going to hear from the superintendent and the administrative team, and listen to appropriately public registered comments about the substance of the closure of the school. So tonight is arguably a board education evening to hear what will likely be differing viewpoints on the closure of a school in the district, so that when they make their decision on November 26, 2019, they will have heard all voices and perspective with respect to the closure of the school. To add to this very complex process, the Pennsylvania Department of Education, which governs the district's operations by way of Regulation 22 PA Code Section 349.28, further requires notification to the Department of Education of any anticipated closure of a building. The district intends to take all steps in order to accomplish these notification requirements as part of tonight's hearing, and the district will then go over the materials that will be provided to the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and we have preliminarily prepared such transmittal to the Department of Education, which will be modified as the result of tonight's hearing. Simply put, this evening's hearing is a hearing that is required under Section 780 of the Public School Code. It is also important to note that this hearing is solely designed to determine whether or not the district should close Pine Forge Elementary School. And I think this is an important distinction, what I am about to say. This hearing is not, and I repeat, not, about determining where students who are currently assigned to the Pine Forge Elementary School or any Boyertown area school district attendance area will attend in future years following the potential closure of the school. That is not part of the hearing process. That is not part of this legal requirement for tonight's hearing, and that is the subject matter of a completely separate process that is being conducted by the district's right-sizing redistricting committee. And the reason I say that is, while there is a defined procedure to close a school building, the board itself and the district itself is vested with almost unilateral authority to determine where students go within our school district's school buildings. So that really isn't the subject matter of public debate, discourse, and the like. That is solely up to the district administration to determine where the students will go to as the result of this process. The only required hearing is about closure, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, the implications of closing the Pine Forge Elementary School. During the public comment period tonight, the board will not recognize any questions, and by the way, it's not the intent of this process to be a town hearing or a town meeting where there will be an exchange between the district administration or the board. It's designed to receive testimony. So if you have questions, you can certainly pose those questions, and they may be answered by the district administration following this hearing when the record is transcribed by the court stenographer. And in other words, we are not going to recognize any comments or testimony on attendance areas that may be altered following the closure of the Pine Forge Elementary School. If you're here tonight to talk about that, you certainly can listen, but we will not be taking any testimony on that particular issue this evening. As I said before, a court stenographer is here this evening. We'll be recording all of this, as well as gathering all of the evidence. And for the purposes of the record, I am going to formally admit into evidence the following items. Number one, and I'm going to go through the additional aspects on this for the procedures for public comment. The document entitled Scope of Hearing and Procedures of the Board President in the Conduct of the Hearing for the Potential Closure of the Pine Forge Elementary School, as Exhibit 1. Exhibit 2 is the ownership information of the actual property and recorded documents that show the ownership of the Pine Forge Elementary School. And that is both Exhibit 2 and Exhibit 3. Exhibit 4 is the Douglas Township letter dated March 22, 2019 to the board about the potential closure of the Pine Forge Elementary School. Exhibit 5 is the PowerPoint that you are about to hear through Dr. Bennon and his administrative team on this matter. Exhibit 6 is the Boyertown School District right-sizing scenario SWOT analysis that was prepared in conjunction with the strategic planning involving the closure of the Pine Forge Elementary School. Exhibit 7 is an analysis of the district enrollment scenarios prepared by board member David Lewis on May 14, 2019. Exhibit 8 is the resolution of the school board establishing this hearing. Exhibit 9 is the letter to both the Douglas Township Berks County Planning Commission and the Berks County Planning Commission in accordance with the municipality's planning code. And Exhibit 10 is the other copy of that document. Exhibit 11 is a letter authored by Dr. Bennon to the community regarding the closure hearing being scheduled tonight regarding Pine Forge Elementary School. And Exhibit 12 represents an August 16, 2019 letter of the Berks County Planning Commission on their views regarding the closure of the school. And the board will have an opportunity, obviously, to review all of these exhibits both tonight and following the hearing. Exhibit 13 are the verified advertisements of tonight's hearing. Exhibit 14 represents the minutes of the Douglas Township Planning Commission submitted the other day to Rebecca Klauser, Board Secretary, regarding the closure of Pine Forge Elementary School. All of those exhibits are herewith being admitted into evidence for the purposes of tonight's hearing. And finally, with respect to the rules of public comment, which will be applicable when the public comment period starts, is that it mentions that the Board of School Directors is interested in hearing comments from district residents and employees who wish to express their opinions about the closure of the Pine Forge Elementary School. Comment periods will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. Rebecca Klauser will be indicating when 30 seconds is left in your time period, and At the conclusion of the time period, we ask that you cooperatively finish speaking at that time period to give all others who wish to speak an opportunity to speak and to conform to the rules. In order to ensure that district schedules sufficient time on the agenda for individual presentations, we have asked that individuals sign in advance, and I believe there was an online sign-in opportunity, and I believe there was a sign-in sheet that was near the entry of this room before the hearing for that purpose, and that is what we're going to be using to address names on the list. Testimony from the floor will not be allowed if the individuals did not sign up to speak prior to the start of the hearing. District residents and employees of the district are invited, however, to submit written testimony for the hearing, which needs to be received by the board secretary on or before September 24, 2019. All elements of written testimony will be given to every board member in the district, and board members will be requested to review the written testimony as part of their deliberative process prior to the board vote in November. And once again, if you are a resident and you wish to have your written comments regarding the proposed closure included and forwarded to the board and then subsequently to the Department of Education, deliver those comments to Rebecca A. Klauser at the district's administration offices at 911 Montgomery Avenue, Boyertown, Pennsylvania 19512. And if you want to be included in the materials, be sure to include your name and your address, the identification of the sender as a resident or employee, and a description of whether you support or object to the proposed closure and any justifications you want to submit in connection with that. I will be reminding individuals when we go through the public comment period to observe those public speaking requirements. And I've already probably outlived my welcome and talking way too long about this issue. So without further ado, I am going to be turning over the presentation to Dr. Dana Bedden, who is our superintendent of schools. Dr. Bedden.
Mr. President, board members and audience, I'll be moving down because we'll be presenting as a team. So I'll be presenting from that way facing you all. I will be moving down to the floor to face the board and present from the floor with my team. Thank you.
And we do request the administrative team to speak loudly enough so that and slowly enough so that the stenographer can appropriately record the information.
Again, good evening to everyone. Before you, we kind of listed an agenda to provide the format and break out how the presentation will flow. Initially, I will share information regarding the demographics, an introduction and a little backdrop and a profile of Pine Forge Elementary School to share and recognize the project team members, and then discuss really what is scenario 2 that was presented to the school board. Within scenario 2, you will have information regarding the demographics of Pine Forge Elementary School, enrollment trends, the age and repair costs of the facility by Ms. Torsha. Then Dr. Kim, the Chief Human Resource Officer, will speak to the staffing resources. Mr. Michael Stout will speak to the academic resources, and then I'll return about the fiscal and operational resources and efficient and effective use of those resources. This is the profile that you've seen before. Nothing has changed. Once we do our October 1st enrollment count that we are required to turn into the Pennsylvania Department of Education, this will be updated. Again, I'm not going to go into detail to it. It's in the packet. It's a current one we've used throughout this study. And again, it will be updated once we turn in our official count. Key research considerations. Back in 2015, which is another indication of how long this process has been ongoing, the district actually had Hanover Research do some research on this situation and the potential closing of Pine Forge Elementary School. So this is something that predates a number of years, and a conversation has been going on for a while. But within that study provided to the district, they found the following reasons that schools typically undergo the consideration for potentially closing a school. Typically to relieve facility overcrowding, if the school expansion is not possible, to avoid underuse of buildings, to make effective use of new or existing space, to better relate program resources to the needs and or reduce operating costs. As you review that list, you will see that there are several of those things that actually relate to the current situation. Specifically, addressing the underuse of our buildings, the idea of making effective use of existing space, and then in this case, to better relate program resources to the needs and reduce operating costs. So in essence, we actually have 4 of the 5 listed as conditions that this scenario was presented under. When I arrived in the district just 1 year and 2 days ago, I was giving a performance goal of providing the board with an effective use of our school facilities to support teaching and learning. Part of that task, which specifically applies to this particular hearing, was to provide the school board with a scenario using 9 school buildings and to be effective through the 2020-2021 school year. Effectively, scenario 2, as Mr. Sultanic shared, was voted on to move forward for this hearing for further consideration and deliberation. I won't go through this. Mr. Sultanic read section 13-131, but specifically, we will be speaking to be in alignment with the code requirements regarding the pupil attendance, meaning enrollment of the school, the condition of the school building, and the purpose for better usage and other issues associated with the school of why we would meet the requirements of the Pennsylvania Code should the board move forward with closing of Pine Forge Elementary School. This particular list is a partial list of all the people involved in the process. One of the things that I was committed to was that this was not something that was going to be gone in isolation. So I would ask that, and while the stenographer won't be able to see all the people, but for the benefit of the audience, all those members who are listed on the slide that are here, please stand. So that gives you a snapshot of some of the team members who were part of the process. Additionally, one of the commitments that we made was to...
Excuse me, Dr. Bedden. In order to reflect that for the purposes of the record, can you mention who did stand up as part of the process?
We have standing up present tonight is Ms. Mary Beth Torsha here, Michael Stout present, Mia Kim present, looks like Rachel Franco present, Mr. Keel present. That's Kelly Mason present. We have Becky Klauser in the back, Steve, up there. We have Sarah Albero present. We have Stephanie Landis present. Steve Missimer present from Transportation. We have Lisa, oh my God, Lisa's last name, Shade present. Cindy Bartholomew present. And you're gonna kill me? Andy Rupert, present with us from the middle school. Old age has gotten me. Thank you. And again, a number of the members are not here and able to join us today. Not here with us also is outside consultants that were used as part of the process to be independent data gatherers in this process. It was Montgomery Educational Consultants. The profile of that organization, it is named after Bill Montgomery as the primary and principal of that organization. Mr. Montgomery has 44 years experience in education. For the record, he has 20 years as a public school board member in Pennsylvania. He actually served for 20 years in Rose Tree Media School Board, which is not very different from Boyertown. He also has been a part of the Delaware County IU and been a part of their facilities planning process. His 44 years in public education includes being an administrator and actually in charge of facility planning process for the largest school district in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, is where his expertise comes from. On his technology side was Mr. Tim Lambert, who had 20 years of experience in education. His focus is dedicated to education, not stretching himself thin and going into other areas with working on enrollment projections, geographical information systems, long-range planning scenarios, and database and application development. Some sample of the districts they have worked with, for the record, was Norristown School District, which is not far from us, Rose Tree Media School District with about 3,800 students. Norristown has 7,000. Upper Darby School District, 12,000 students. And one example of their national presence is also working with Richmond County School System in Augusta, Georgia, with 32,000 students who I believe they continue to work with today. We also, beyond just the individuals who served as part of the core team, had a number of departments participate in gathering data and providing information to the core team and administration. You can see the 6 departments: teaching and learning department, which provided information on relative to the profile, the academic program, class size, social emotional learning, student services, dealing with student assignment, the deviation impact, enrollment history of Pine Forge, and the historical nature of the gray areas that were used in Boyertown Area School District. Our facilities team with data, both current and previous data regarding Pine Forge Elementary School. Human resources with focusing on staffing, the impact on staffing, and also contributing to class size information relative to the number of teachers. Transportation department providing information on the current transportation status of the Pine Forge Elementary School students, as well as giving projected bus ride time estimates. It is important to note that the transportation department was given specific direction that no bus ride estimate was to exceed the current max that we use now. And at that point in time, I was told that we do have students who are on the bus for up to 50 minutes, so they were given a target that any plan must stay within 50 minutes or less when they responded to us that whether it was doable or not. And then finally, the principals who were focusing on support of what happens with the teaching and learning, but more importantly, transition support and the social emotional learning of our students in the midst of any transition that may result in this process. Scenario 2, and there was 2 scenarios provided to the school board. Part of scenario 2 was a review of the demographics of Pine Forge Elementary School. You see the original built date and when some type of work was done on the building. The building was originally built in 1928. It is the oldest school building in Boyertown Area School District. The 8 acres located in a rural area with paved drives and parking areas to give you an idea. It is currently a part of Douglas Township, which has, as of the 2017 census, approximately 3,579 residents. This comes directly from the 2012 feasibility study. This was not something that we pulled out of thin air. That was a comprehensive analysis done on every school building in the district with this type of report that was provided for every building. The structure is a 1-story building with concrete floors, metal and Tecton roof deck with a foam roof, wood frame with masonry brick walls on the outside. The current Pine Forge Elementary School number of households that we are able to identify in our student information system has 174 addresses listed that we would identify as single, at least households that the students are coming from. The current enrollment as of today was 215 students out of a 350 PDE capacity. The personnel and operating cost profile of the district for the past 2 years, for the 2018-2019 school year, and that's showing at $2.8 million in a combination of both personnel and operating costs. This current year is sitting just a little bit over $2.7 million of a combination of personnel and operating costs for the school. So scenario 2, as Mr. Sultanic spoke to, that as a district we are required to outline how a Pine Forge closure also would qualify and meet the requirements outlined by school code and PDE requirements. The goals that we went forward in developing this presentation for the board with that in mind was looking, one, at balancing the building utilization and capacity versus enrollment, an effective and efficient utilization of the resources provided to the district. And again, that's about the entire school district and us holding ourselves accountable for the management of not only our facilities, but our financial resources. Potential reasons for the closure. This has been, of course, discussed by past boards and administrations. To record, I could find at least since approximately 2012 and maybe longer. We received communication just recently from previous board president that this has gone on for at least 3 tenures of superintendents in this school district, this discussion. We have seen a declining enrollment, as you will see over time. Today you will see enrollment as it has been projected and captured by the official count from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. The age and repair costs of the facility is what we will present. And the other potential reasons for the closure of Pine Forge would be redirecting of staff resources to vacant positions. This past year, the district ended up having vacant positions totaling $1.2 million. Had we not had that $1.2 million worth of vacancy and turnover savings, we actually may not have come within budget. As you know that we, from your final budget report, we came in about $800,000 under our expenditure costs. That is basically one-time money, because if we filled every position, we would not have had that money. And our goal obviously is to fill all of our positions to meet the needs of our students. Closing the building would end up in a reduction of district FTE count, meaning that you would have fewer number of staff. So that would be a lower financial cost on the personnel side. And you say FTE count, for example, we currently have a vacant principal position. So if Pine Forge were to close, you could assign that principal to the vacant spot, and you would have one less principal position on the rolls. That's what we mean by FTE count. You actually would save money because you wouldn't have to fill that position anymore. You would have a redirect the fiscal resources to use on 9 schools versus 10. You also would have year after year savings to address the structural deficiency that exists in the budget, which you will see later, that each year, without a tax increase and a lot of changes, for example, what we had to make this past year to save money to fit within the budget. At this time, I'd like to invite Ms. Torsha to talk about enrollment trends.
Good evening. I would like to review with you the Pine Forge enrollment trends, and showing that we have seen a decline in enrollment, but to be fair, in 2017-2018, that was the first year that we had removed the 6th grade from the elementaries and had moved them to the middle level. So you can see that from 17-18 to 18-19, that we have slid downward, as well as this year, our first day enrollment was 214. And this is based upon the enrollment that is collected on the third day. This is an overview that is completed by the Department of Education, and that is the actual enrollment as well as projections. And to the right side of the slide, you can see that they are projecting that as we go from 2019 to 2024, they're projecting that overall the enrollment for the school district will continue to go down. This shows as well, if you're looking at K to 5, you can see just within a K-5 building within the Boyertown Area School District what the trend is, and as well as the prediction of live births down in the right corner. As we look at the age and repair cost of the facility, these are some of the identified major deficiencies that we have found at Pine Forge, and that would be inefficient energy, no insulation, limited air conditioning. We do have air conditioning in select areas, the library, office, faculty rooms, multi-purpose. It is a wood structure. This should have three-phase power to support the additional HVAC. It currently only has one phase. And it has been reported that the sewer plant is fine, but may need an upgrade to support more than 350 staff students. The summary of capital plan costs and functional upgrades. These are the things that have been identified by our facilities department that would be needing to be done or repaired over the next 5 years. If you look at the list, you can see the replace or repair of the roofs, which would be upwards of $700,000. Lunch tables, replace the front windows, dry fit, window panel replacement, fire alarm, security, piping and pump tank, repoint around building, new shed, some window screen repair, sidewalk repair, electric service upgrade, and the HVAC electrical upgrade, which brings you to a total of $1,854,000. Now, this does not include any underground infrastructure, such as sewer pipes, water lines, underground electric, or sewer lines. As completed in the feasibility study back in 2012, and then again reviewed again in March 2019 by KCBA, the architects that we have worked with, they are projecting that to renovate the building, it would be upwards of $8 million for the total project cost. So what we would do to redirect our cost avoidance using capital improvements or modernization, we would, using the initial enrollment of August 26, 2019, Pine Forge Elementary has 215 kindergarten through fifth grade students, approximately 61% students, would be $1,854,000 of capital improvement dollars for Pine Forge, which equals about $8,623 per student. Again, to modernize the building, it would be about $8 million, $584,000, which would equate to about $39,926 per student. So overall, Boyertown Area School District has a student population of 6,633 students, minus the Pine Forge elementary school enrollment. So again, looking at the capital improvement dollars and projected FMV almost completely fund the 2019-20 SIP or future projects. I believe Dr. Kim.
Good evening, everyone. So as you can see, as noted on the slide, the staffing data for Pine Forge is based on August. Again, I apologize, my context is not working so well, so I'm going to have to look at my numbers here. Based on August 21st data. And before I begin, I know that Dr. Bedden had mentioned with reference to FTE. I do want to elaborate a little bit more on that. It is actually full-time equivalent where an employee's scheduled hours is divided by the employer's hour of a full-time. So as you can see for professionals, under classroom teachers, we do have 11, and that's from kindergarten to grade 5 at Pine Forge. And then for related arts teachers, art, music, library, and health and PE, we do have, again, 2.25 FTE. So just for clarification, that doesn't mean we have 2 1/4 of a teacher, just so that we have a bear in mind. So that means we have multiple teachers, total of their hours of a full-time equivalency is 2.25. And related service providers, such as intervention teachers, special education teachers, reading specialists, speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists. We also have a physical therapist supporting as well, and certified school nurse. They equate to 6.54 FTE, a total of not quite 20 FTE. It is 19.79 FTE. And then for classified staff, we've noted that as an employee count because many of them do work in a very small part-time capacity. So we do have a cafeteria manager, 3 cafeteria workers, and an administrative assistant to the principal. And we also have library clerk that has served as Title I clerk as well. And then we have 7 paraprofessionals whose support ranges from providing services to students receiving learning support, instructional paraprofessional as well, and then also Title I, and then cafeteria and playground aides, along with folks who may have multiple positions. And then we have a staff nurse and 2 custodians, one who serves as a head custodian and someone who works in the second shift. Total of 16 classified staff. So then, should the board decide to close Pine Forge, how do we utilize the existing staff? It is to redirect them to vacant positions. So we do have a principal who can be reassigned to another location. Currently, we do have a teacher in special assignment who is serving as an acting principal in one of our elementary schools. All the custodial and support staff can be reassigned to vacant positions throughout the school district, which can equate to a potential of 7.25 FTE reductions. And also, savings can be captured through a reassignment or reduction in instructional staff, with the potential of approximately 19 FTE reductions. And so what does that equate to? An average teacher salary in Boyertown area school district is $77,000 plus benefits, and for approximately $90,000 to $100,000 savings per FTE. Many FTEs are anticipated to be reassigned. So could be to 1 million plus reduction in personnel cost. So on the very bottom of the screen, there is a caption about reduction in cost example. So oftentimes one might wonder, well, how does reduction in FTE equate to, especially if we are reassigning them? For example, if we're to have 2 vacant custodial positions, 2 custodians may be reassigned to those positions. This will result in savings in both salary and benefits by not adding additional FTEs to fill those 2 vacant positions. And then we have the academic resources, Mr. Mike Stout.
So thinking about the potential academic improvements that we would have for the upcoming school years, all along we have been discussing the redirection of specific funds and savings with respect to instructional priorities concerning social emotional learning, adding counselors across the district, and contracted behavioral specialists across the district. We would be able to fill vacant instructional vacancies. We would improve our utilization of instructional and support staff. We would also be able to provide a stabilization of enrollment at Earl Elementary School. And finally, looking at the use of cost avoidance dollars towards academic and/or operational improvements in other areas. Practices that the Boyertown Area School District has had in place for many years is looking at 2-unit buildings and 4-unit buildings. 2-unit buildings have had a standard practice of 51 to 54 students in a 2-unit school in a primary classroom as a maximum amount, and 101 to 108 students in a 4-unit school for the ultimate size for classes. In our intermediate grades, the numbers go up a little higher. Our practices have been 59 to 62 students in a 2-unit school, and in a 4-unit school, 117 to 124 students in a 4-unit school. Typically, in red, on the right-hand corner of the slide, it talks about what we've really tried to maintain in our class size, and that's in grades K through 3, a maximum of 25 students per class, and in grades 4 through 5, a maximum of 27 students per class. There's a lot of information that is on this slide, and it might be difficult for the audience to see, but it shows projected enrollment numbers under scenario 2 for the 2018-19 school year, all the way through the 2020-21 school year, and looks at all of our elementary schools under scenario 2 and gives you a projected class enrollment average per building. Key components to really think about, as we don't really specifically know what our kindergarten enrollments will be for the upcoming school year. It's difficult to project. So for the 2021 school year, the caveat and the star there talks about kindergarten data is not available, therefore not included in those numbers. And again, just to reiterate where we are, we have through the 1920 school year, which we are currently in, and projecting to the 2021 school year, our numbers have maintained in those averages, and we've always made exceptions to the rule. For instance, we've had an increased enrollment in Washington Elementary School this year in kindergarten, so we decided to add another section kind of at the last minute, as well as Pine Forge Elementary School. We added a second half just because we weren't sure of what our kindergarten enrollment numbers were going to be. But over the time, we've maintained the average of what our criteria has been. One bullet that we put out in previous presentations was talking about small class sizes, and 2 points of evidence supporting that smaller class sizes don't necessarily yield a substantial difference in student achievement. It comes down to classroom instruction. So we know of classrooms that have had smaller class sizes and maybe is a more difficult class that is a little bit more challenging, might yield less student achievement versus some of our classrooms that have more students that, based on good instructional practice, allows us the opportunity for greater student achievement in those rooms. Dr. Bed made reference to this slide a little bit earlier. This is the specific amount of time in our 5 buses and their current student estimated travel time. And then under scenario 2, with the same 5 buses, what our projected travel time would be per bus. Do you want to speak to that, Jeff?
I was asking Mr. Stout to highlight that when people had concerns about the time, one of the things that, and obviously as enrollment shifts and they do an analysis of transportation, doing the scenarios that we ran with the current student population that we had, Mr. Mitsumer was actually able to dedicate a direct, what we call express service. So it would actually, from the farthest reach issue that was discussed, actually have a dedicated bus that would just get those students and take them directly to their school. He was actually able to identify a bus route that would do that. So it would not have the traditional, typical multiple stops in the process. And obviously this would be continued analysis, even with the class size data that Mr. Stout spoke about. The numbers that we get in place with this year's enrollment will allow us to more effectively project out for even for next year once the numbers are finalized from this school year. Those numbers aren't final, so we still had to use what we had presented earlier to you from the previous presentations. But we wanted to remind people that that estimated student travel time was, again, where he was able to develop a direct express bus route for students who are at the farthest end of the Pine Forge current boundaries and drive them directly to whatever school they will be going to. The other challenges and opportunities that exist with the school district are around fiscal and operational resources. This slide has been a consistent slide that has been presented to the board throughout their budget and the community conversations, presentations. One of the challenges that I will tell you that we often find is that if people don't follow the budgetary process and presentation completely through, or don't look at the video, it's often not clear to them what we mean. So what you have here on this particular slide, for the benefit of the record, was the fiscal challenges and deficits over the past 4 years. We overcame the challenges of this current year by making some early reduction in spending opportunities for our schools and our central office. We made some changes, for example, as you know, in midstream of our contracts with some of our vendors that we were able to save money. And then, of course, the biggest one was our vacancy turnover savings that helped us come in and meet our budget capacity this year. This particular slide showed the 5-year projections, what would happen with tax increases. The major challenge that it's showing is that for the last few years, the Boyertown Area School District has been balancing its budget by using its fund balance. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania allows a district our size to have up to 8% of its expenditures in its fund balance, which typically is, in layman's terms, a savings account for you to use for emergencies. Good fiscal management obviously means that once you use that, your goal is to put it back. The fact that we've had to use that for multiple years to balance our budget has also negatively impacted the district's bond rating, which in turn causes the district to have a higher cost for borrowing, which in turn passes on a higher cost to our taxpayers. Of importance to note is that by 2023, I believe, even with tax increases, our fund balance will go into the negative if we continue doing what we have been doing. Now, we took some corrective action this past year with the current team that we slowed that drain. As you know, this current year, we actually had to use just over $800,000 of our fund balance to balance our budget. One of the goals that was set out for me as a superintendent by the board that I committed to was that we would use under $1 million this year to slow the drain on our fund balance while we're trying to get rid of the structural deficiencies in our budget. It is important to note too that these projections are basically saying that we are paying our bills using our savings account, which means that we're spending faster than we have revenue coming in. This particular slide showed the projections if you did not have a tax increase, and it means that we would run out of money earlier than in 2022, where we would be in the negative on our fund balance account. Of important note that this was not something that was new to this administration. This was pointed out by your previous interim, Linda Adams, and then pointed out by your previous 12-year veteran, Dave Soblowski, who projected this was coming many years in advance. So this is not something new to the district. The potential fiscal and operational improvements, should the board decide to close Pine Forge, would be to reduce the square footage ratio per custodian. Because we have a number of custodial vacancies that exist, not only will we be able to fill those vacancies, but we'd also reduce the workload on our custodians because they would only have to maintain the square footage associated with the 9 buildings rather than the 10 buildings. As you've heard, we would use staff to fill vacant positions. For example, we have cafeteria worker vacancies in a number of schools, so the cafeteria workers that will be working at Pine Forge would actually go fill some of those vacancies. The same thing with custodial staff, the secretaries and paraprofessionals. We'd have the possible redirection or reduction in personnel costs. We come up with a conservative number of $1.2 million to $1.4 million using the lower professional staff salary. Meaning that instead of the true cost, which you saw with about $2-point-something million worth of personnel costs, we did this estimate assuming that it would be someone new, potentially, based on if we had vacancies after we placed staff. Well, a beginning teacher in the district, as you know, starts at around 50-something thousand. So that's less than the $77,000+ on the average cost of a teacher. So that's why that number is lower than what you saw for the personnel costs in the building. Again, it's about trying to be more conservative, under promise and over deliver, and not stack the deck and make it look like it's more higher than what it really could be. We found that the fair market value right now listed for Pine Forge Elementary School is about $2 million. So if the board did decide to close the building, you have the option obviously of repurposing it for something and or selling it, which would be one-time money. We have not had any conversations with anyone about who to sell it to. We have purposely, as administration, stayed away from that. Because until a decision is made, there has been no conversation. I say that for the record because there's been a lot of speculation. But the fair market value was reported at about $2 million. You could use the estimated $2 million from the sale towards one-time expenses. Now, that $2 million actually would fund the entire capital improvement identified for the next this fiscal year, which was at about $2.1 million for all of the schools listed on the capital improvement plan for this year. Obviously, the initial conversation with me from the board was trying to develop a plan to be more efficient and effective use of our school buildings. We'd have decreased maintenance and utilization costs for the 9 schools. We do not put a number to that because until we get into it and to compare it, but we know that obviously it will be less on that part of the budgetary aspect. You have the opportunity for cost avoidance because if you chose to modernize the building, it would be an over an $8 million investment to modernize the building. You have the potential of cost avoidance of the recommended capital improvement because you could use the 1.8 that we were recommending that if you keep the building open and we still stand by that, then we need to do the capital improvements identified by our staff for the upgrades to the building, even if it's not modernized, to bring it much more up to functionality. We currently spend about $100,000 a year on the school operational costs. That could be redirected towards another resource, and that's year over year redirection and savings. So the total potential cost avoidance or redirection, as you can see, would be roughly 1.9 to almost $9 million. And more importantly, the fiscal impact would be you would slow or stop the use of general fund balance to balance the operating budget. And I've already spoken to the fact that we actually had to use $800,000 of our fund balance to balance this year's budget. The final numbers are coming in and showing that we actually will potentially come in about $800,000 under. So the board has been given options to consider, which could be to replenish that drawdown on your fund balance because we're now below the 8%. And by the way, 8% of our expenditures is only 45 days of our operating expense. So if we had a catastrophic event, we could only function for 45 days in this school district. In essence, we wouldn't be able to pay people after 45 days in our school district. And in the end, it's about efficient and effective use of our facility resources, and we just have a summary slide there of what things look like currently with our utilization and what utilization would look like should you have only 9 buildings within the district, would be the change. And Mr. Sultanic spoke to all of the exhibits which are in the remaining slides. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're just going to take a 5-minute break, kind of digest all of that information, and then we'll begin the public comment portion of the public hearing.
Just a reminder that the order would be for those who signed up online first to be called upon to speak based on that list that was provided, and then they will go straight down the list on the paper sign-in sheet after that would be the order.
Okay, it's now time for the public comments. As was mentioned, it's a 3-minute time frame. We have a sign-up sheet based on first come, first serve on email over the weekend, and then we have the sign-up sheet from this evening again, in order of the folks that signed up. So we will go in that order. The first person that signed up via email is Becky Eschbach, and then in the queue is Krista Gross.
Just as a matter of note, before the time clock starts, Ms. Eschbach indicated that she has a handout that she would like to come to deliver to the board. They should be given to Rebecca Klauser before or just leave it at the podium and we'll get it to Rebecca Klauser for the board's review.
And I have a copy for the court stenographer as well with the exhibits. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Becky Eschbach, a Boyertown graduate, a concerned parent, and a current director at a Fortune 500 company with over 15 years of corporate experience in analysis and strategy. Even though there has been a significant emotional impact on Boyertown families and teachers as a result of the events leading up to and including this hearing, I'm going to push those thoughts and feelings aside tonight and focus on a factual, data-driven approach. We've all heard the research about the detriments of larger class sizes from well-established sources, such as increasing class size will harm not only children's test scores in the short run, but also their life outcomes. Money saved today by increasing class sizes has been proven to lead to a more substantial social and educational costs in the future. And increases in class size are most harmful to challenged socioeconomic areas, as is the case with those schools impacted under scenario 2. Putting aside the apparent discrimination against 3 of the 4 more challenged economic areas of the district, small increases in average class sizes are masked large increases in some schools. So I request Exhibit 1 be entered into the record, which reflects the percentage increases from class sizes from the current 1920 enrollment as provided by the administration August 15th versus 2021 Scenario 2 enrollment. If you take particular notice, there are over 6 schools, 6 grades rather, that have an egregious increase of over 50% increases in class size throughout the district, not just in Coverdale, Boyertown, and Earl, while 8 additional grades will see increases ranging from 13 to 40%. I saw that you also showed some data opposing this, and such as the inherent problem with published research. So to negate this effect, I'd like to present my analysis of the impact of class size increases at Boyertown based on the data. I ran a statistical analysis, which is a common method in evaluating the strength of a relationship of a dependent and 1 or more independent variables by use of statistical regression. It is absolute. Using actual class sizes and socioeconomic status as measured by the percentage of free or discounted lunch participants across the district's elementary schools, combined with documented test scores, a multivariable regression analysis results in a 91% correlation between socioeconomic status, class size, and test scores. Simply stated, this is irrefutable evidence that adopting Scenario 2 will lower academic achievement across the district. The regression correlation is so strong, in fact, that it can predict with a 91% confidence level that if Scenario
30 seconds remaining.
Adopted, we will realize a 38% drop in combined test scores at Earl Elementary School with over a 90% confidence based on statistics. In closing, if you choose to vote for Scenario 2, you are knowingly fostering an achievement gap directly contrary to Boyertown's mission in trying to enable all students to succeed. Scenario 2 is not the answer. No, Dr. Benn. In the end, it's not about the efficient use of our buildings. It's about our students, our children, our future. Thank you.
Okay, up is Krista Gross, and in the queue is Jamie Antosh, if I pronounce that correctly.
I wasn't sure I was going to stand up here tonight and speak. Today did not start off how I planned. However, this speech is not going to be how I originally expected. Therefore, how everyone is going to get up here and tell you all kinds of data, statistics, as why you should not close Pine Forge, and it's likely I would agree with all of them. Instead, I'm going to give the administration and the school board a few vocabulary words they should learn and practice. Transparency, having thoughts, feelings, or motives that are easily perceived. Being transparent has never been this district's strong suit. They've proven it time after time by giving conflicting information each presentation they give us. In fact, they can't even be transparent with each other. Some board members are privy to information and others are not. They are continually playing cleanup at one bad decision after another. Honesty, free of deceit and untruthfulness. This week alone, I have witnessed on many occasions board members and administrators not giving honest answers when confronted. If you expect us to have trust in your decision-making, then you need to give us the truth. Respect, due regard for feelings, wishes, rights, and traditions of others. This one means the most to me. The teachers and staff at Pine Forge have been treated with no respect at all. Administrators are using the term when Pine Forge closes and not if. They are not following through with the promise to stand by our teachers and walk them through this process. Contracts are being handed out to new hires like candy, in turn leaving fewer and fewer options for our teachers if the school closes. Our children deserve their respect too. Administration is saying that with this closure, they can provide adequate counselors and behavioral staff, but they deserve that with or without a closure. They deserve class sizes that will allow them to excel. They deserve teachers who are supported and praised, not told that they can be made better. Our teachers are great already, not just good. And it's because of them that my kids are striving and learning and excelling. Without them, this district would not be where they are now. So we should not be pitting them against each other in order to advance in this district. And to the taxpayers and the community members, please pay attention. Please hold them accountable. If you don't think this
30 seconds left,
then you're wrong. Please vote responsibly in November. We need to do right by these kids and put board members in that will put them first.
Okay, up is Jamie Antosh, and in the queue is Jennifer Irie.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Though I am remiss to believe that this board hasn't already formed its opinion and decision, I will choose to remain optimistic that you will hear what everyone is saying, listen openly to the concerns that are being expressed this evening in the letters that you have received and through conversation before making a formal decision. I am disappointed that you would schedule this hearing on the same night as back to school night at Gilbertsville Elementary. I have 2 children at New Hanover, and I believe that closing Pine Forge would affect all students in some capacity, whether it be in the next year or in the next several years down the road. Up until tonight, I was unsuccessful in finding the exact list of renovations that you believe necessary at Pine Forge in order to keep the building open and up to code. What is the plan for the land, and will there be availability to reopen if and when more growth in the area continues? Have you considered that they are accounting for a potential New Hanover Town Center with 821 dwellings that is being proposed next month? Ryan is still building off of Swamp Pike, and Moyer continues to build in this area. I am certain that there is building elsewhere within the district. I am only familiar with the current building in New Hanover Township. Will busing or anything that you are proposing over the next few years affect our taxes in any way? I am concerned that we are focused on the proposing of school closure, yet unwilling to work with our teachers to get a contract ratified. I would consider ratifying a contract as a show of good faith with the district staff before potentially eliminating positions of any capacity. We just redid the district lines. Will this affect redistricting again in the near future? What happens if and when all of our elementary schools are at a maximum capacity? New Hanover already has a class of 25 kindergartners, which in my opinion is too large, significantly too large. Sections of 24 are considered acceptable. I have to wonder where you find your data, because as an educator myself for 18 years, I don't agree. There are other schools in the same condition and they are full. Why are we not providing lower numbers for our younger grades especially? From what I understand, Pine Forge had only, what I had heard earlier was the 1 a.m. class you just added. When the district lines were addressed, why couldn't we have created more sections at Pine Forge, allowing for smaller class sizes for our entire kindergarten student population district-wide? Is this still a plan to go full-day kindergarten? Will this change your plans in any capacity?
30 seconds left.
Our business is children. They are ultimately the ones who thrive when we do right by them, and they suffer when we don't. Thank you for your time.
As part of presenting the evidence, if there's a way to submit your speeches or comments, and I think we have till September 24th or so, correct?
That is correct, but we also had asked that when they signed up if they could bring us a copy. So if you don't mind leaving one, but if not, you can still submit it, as the solicitor said, until the 24th. But one of our requests is to make sure your comments to get into record was to provide us a copy tonight so that the evidence would be there exactly as you presented it.
Okay, up we have Jennifer Irie, and in the queue is Ruth Deeroff.
I'm opposed to the closure of Pine Forge based on the following facts. Number one, closing Pine Forge decreases the maximum elementary capacity of the district to 3,500 students. With the potential of 3,219 new residences being added, there is simply not enough room in the remaining schools to justify the closure of one. The Kingston Hill development alone consists of 205 homes with 80 children attending elementary school this year. With 9 developments currently under construction, to say that our enrollment will grow by only about 274 students over the next 10 years still appears to be a gross underestimate. Furthermore, if Gilbertsville is at 98% and New Hanover is at 96% capacity currently, and we've been told repeatedly that this is problematic, then it follows suit that Boyertown at 97% and Colebrookdale at 98% will also be problematic with the closure of Pine Forge. The only thing Scenario 2 accomplishes is the shift of overcrowding from east to west. This is not a proactive solution to a serious, ongoing problem. Class size guidelines will be dangerously close to being exceeded if Pine Forge closes. The catchment presented shows Boyertown at 677 children for the 23 to 24 school year. This leaves room for only 23 additional children before being at 100% capacity, which is less than 1 additional child per classroom. I'd like to point out to the board that with less than 1 week prior to the start of school, administration decided to split the 29 morning kindergarten session at Pine Forge into AM and PM sessions due to a larger than projected number of students enrolling at the last minute. Can we be confident then, looking at the projected enrollment even 1 year from now, knowing that residential construction and planning are ongoing, especially the very large Zern tract, which is slated to begin groundbreaking this fall? Speaking of inaccurate projections, I'd like the board to be aware of current bus ride lengths. From update number 3, slide 56 estimated a current PM bus ride of 43 minutes for bus 47. My daughter rides this bus, and her PM bus ride is actually 58 minutes. 58 minutes to travel 5 miles from Pine Forge to her bus stop. 15 minutes longer than the district's estimate. So how can we be confident the bus rides will be shorter for Pine Forge kids who will be forced to travel farther away than they do now? Will they all be on the express bus? This is just not logistically possible. The cost savings of closing Pine Forge is nowhere near enough to offset the astronomical cost of building a new school or even expanding an existing building. It is actually more cost-effective to invest in the upgrade of an existing
30 seconds left.
I'd like to remind the board of the petition signed by close to 500 members of the community opposing the closure of Pine Forge, as well as opposing the construction of a new school in Montgomery County. Dr. Bedden has, on numerous occasions, stated that building a new school is simply not an option. Based on these facts, it is simply irresponsible to close Pine Forge. Our district will face a huge crisis in the very near future if we lose a school. This is not a risk worth taking, especially when those who lose out the most will be our children. Thank you.
Okay, now up is Ruth Deeroff, and we have Barbara Hunter in the queue.
Good evening. A decision to close Pine Forge School was made to save money. In the long run, I feel that it's going to cost us money. Quite frankly, it did not hurt that the information from the administration wasn't very accurate. The information was gathered from a consultant, and we all know that a consultant can slant the information to the extent that it is desired from the person hiring them. The numbers do not make sense to me, and they certainly don't. They continue to change constantly. I am asking the Department of Ed to please take a look at the numbers and the condition of the Pine Forge School before they put their seal of approval for this school to be closed. In a few years, we will be building a new school, and that is what the majority of the people on this board want. And these taxes were going to go through the roof for the Berks County people and for the marketplace. The anticipated economic savings for all will then become a financial burden for a few. The unfortunate choice will amount to nothing more than another form of unfair taxation. Why should we, residents of Pine Forge, be severely penalized more than any other taxpayer? The geographic boundaries of school districts in Pennsylvania defines real estate marketplaces. The appraised value of property is delineated by our school district borders. Within each of the marketplaces, the placement of the school buildings is an important consideration. This is especially true for elementary education. Home buyers with small children will buy homes based upon travel distance to these schools. Home buyers will also consider the overall real estate impact when considering the purchase of a home. The high cost of relocating a strategically placed elementary school like Pine Forge significantly impacts the real estate taxes for everybody in the Boyertown area school district. So this decision will both decrease market appeal for this district and simultaneously raise the ever-increasing tax burden.
30 seconds left.
I'm going to skip down to the bottom. Closing Pine Forge Elementary School will be a huge mistake. The move unfairly impacts the quality of community life and the economic stability of our current real estate marketplace. The choice to close this school ignores past academic achievement and spits in the faces of these people I've represented for years. Considering what is fair for all the taxpayers, and don't do this for the...
Time's up.
Okay, we now have Barbara. Okay, now up is Barbara Hunter, and in the queue is Joe Yergi.
I don't have a fully fleshed out speech. I kind of pulled the trigger on this yesterday. I am a parent. My husband and I have 6 kids in this district. I have 3 who will be directly affected by this because they will still be in or coming into elementary school next year and for the next, I believe, 10 years after this. I've not spoken publicly on this before. I'm not a Pine Forge parent. I'm a Boyertown parent. And I do have a background in education. I had the privilege of teaching in a private institution where class sizes never exceeded 20 students. And as both a parent and as an educator, I can see the benefits with a small class size. And what caused me to want to speak up on this is that today my daughter came home, and in previous years my kids have had class sizes at Boyertown from 25 to 26. Last year 2 of my kids had classes of 27, and this year my daughter is in a class of 29 students. She's extremely intelligent, but she's still going to struggle with it. I saw it last year when she came home and said, "Can you explain this to me?" And I said, "Did you ask your teacher?" And she said, "Yes," but she didn't have time. She was teaching it to somebody else. Our teachers are amazing. They are talented. They are knowledgeable and professional, but they are stretched thin already. We will simply share the burden of overcrowding in our other schools if you close Pine Forge and if you move those students into our other elementaries. You quoted a cost or per student of over, was it $6,000 per student, $8,000 if you applied funds to Pine Forge. But that $1,854,000 when stretched across 6,633 students in our district suddenly comes out to only $279 per student. And as a parent, I would much rather see my child benefit from a smaller class size and better instruction than from what is less than my car payment. I am seeing the frustration in my students and in our teachers. Volunteering in the school and being in the PTO, I am in that school every day, and I'm seeing morale that is lower now than it was when we started there 6 years ago. We keep talking about being one Boyertown. But if you pass scenario 2, we are going to be one Boyertown in distress as we overcrowd all of our schools.
30 seconds left.
The cost to repair Pine Forge is less than 10%, probably less than 15% of what it will cost us to build a new school, and that will be in our future if we close Pine Forge. If it were a car, it would not be totaled, so the financially responsible thing is to make the repairs that are necessary and do not spread the overcrowding across all of our schools. Thank you.
Okay, now up is Joe Yorgi, followed by Carl Yorgi.
I assume most of you own homes or cars. I assume most of you own a home or a vehicle and make sure that you have money in the bank to fix the roof, repair the dryer, but you haven't done that at Pine Forge or really any of the elementary schools. So what you're telling us is that our quote-unquote old building isn't good enough. And I want to say, have you ever been in Pine Forge? Have you seen the staff, the janitors, and how clean our buildings are? Our kitchen staff. I mean, it is a great school. But my challenge to you, any of you, have any of you been in any of the elementary schools to see the teachers teach, to see the paraprofessionals work with these kids, for the secretaries to know every parent by name? Have any of you been on the buses? Have any of you taken that 55-minute ride? I challenge you to do that and experience it firsthand, and not just Pine Forge, but all of the elementary schools. I see a whole group of teachers. My husband's family is teachers, and I have to say, every one of these people put their heart and soul into our kids, and it's just not Pine Forge, it's across the board. And what you're saying is that this is not enough. They are not worth it. These teachers, these students are worth fighting for. And to shut a school down just because it needs, what, a $5,000 shed, just seems ridiculous. Be in the schools, see what goes on every day, see how everybody makes these kids learn and feel appreciated and go through all the issues they have and still come out. My boys went to school today and they love it. I've never had a child dread school starting, and that's because of this group right here. And I challenge you to get to know not just them, but all of the staff in the elementary schools.
Okay, now up is Carl Yorgi, followed by Samantha Carroll. Is Carl Yorgi? No? Okay. Then we go to Samantha Carroll, who is the next one that signed up, and in the queue is Lucinda Yorgi. No Samantha? Okay. Next up is Lucinda Yorgi. Okay. Then next up is Jennifer Heimbach. And in the queue is Crystal Refschneider.
My concern with closing Pine Forge is the projected filling of our elementary schools to 93 to 98% capacity that was provided to us by your data. If Pine Forge closes, we have 3,500 available seats with the provided projection for the 23-24 school year of 3,321 filled seats. This leaves 179 open elementary seats. While this sounds like a lot, if broken down equally, that's 29 seats for each elementary school left. Broken down further, that leaves 4 seats per grade open. 4 seats are all the room left for projection error. This is a big gamble to close a school with a low operating cost. Dr. Bedden even stated several times at meetings that the district will be back here having meetings sooner about right sizing if it is decided to close Pine Forge. Wouldn't it be more cost efficient to keep a building we already own and renovate rather than a higher cost addition or a new school if projections are off by a small margin? While there may be a few open desks throughout our district, the kids coming in to fill those desks might not match up in the schools or grades that have the open seats. The way to possibly accomplish this is to redistrict every single year, costing the district additional money. This risks switching kids to accommodate open grades at random schools not closest to them, increasing transportation costs, longer bus rides, and families needing to frequently switch childcare. We originally thought our district would have a deficit in 18-19 of $1.2 million to come out ahead with a surplus of over $800,000. If this projection for the year was that off this much with our foreseeable finances, how can we trust the enrollment predictions are going to be accurate too? We can foresee tax dollars, grants, salaries, other expenditures much more predictably than we can predict how many kids are going to be added to the district with development growth. At the end of last school year, it was thought that Pine Forge wouldn't have an incoming kindergarten class. We then received an AM kindergarten class, only to have too big of a class to have it divided into 2 classes a week before school starts. This shows projections can be very inaccurate. And according to the provided projection for 23-24, projection enrollment, we really don't have room for any errors. I feel like this is a losing gamble and a huge risk to our staff, students, and entire community. We are risking stressed out, overworked staff with a higher turnover rate. We risk our students not getting vital time with staff and becoming overwhelmed in spaces filled with excess students. We are risking costing the community more money
30 seconds left.
by only a small 5 projection error in student enrollment. Thank you.
Okay, we have Crystal Reifschneider, if I said that correctly, followed by in the queue Nathan Yorgi.
Okay, I'm battling a cold, so excuse me. Good evening. As a parent, there are many concerns I have if Pine Forge is closed. Time only allows for me to voice a few of those concerns. My first concern is class size. There was a situation this past year where one of my children could work ahead, but she needed one-on-one time to teach her the skill first. With 21 students in that class, the teacher was able to find the 5 to 10 minutes needed to teach her. I question if there were 25 to 30 kids in that class, would she have been able to do the same? With smaller class sizes, the children have more individual attention, resulting in higher academic achievements. Also, with larger class sizes, there is a potential increase in behavioral incidences. Last year, I was shocked when it was brought to my attention the number of safety care incidences that were occurring throughout many grades. On average, my son's class was experiencing safety care incidences twice a week, and he only had 21 kids in his class. This concern was brought up at a previous meeting. An administrator stated that in our larger schools, where there are 4 and 5 units per grade, these situations were decreased because there were more classrooms to spread the kids out in. However, in this situation, closing a 2-unit per grade school and merging it with another 2-unit per grade school would result in an increase of incidences, to which Dr. Bedden agreed. Nothing has been mentioned to calm my concerns since then. Will there be enough trained staff to assist these situations? How much more instructional time will be lost? How much more stress will be put on teachers and other students in the classrooms? I believe that the entire district deserves to have smaller class sizes, and the only way this will happen is to keep 7 elementary schools open and redistrict. My last concern is for the phenomenal teachers and staff that I have wholeheartedly trust my children with every day. I admire and appreciate everything they do. I want to point out that my daughter sat in on one of these district meetings in which another parent asked the board members to come to our school, see the amazing things that go on inside. At that point, not one member has visited. My daughter then turned and asked me, why do they not care? Why do they not come, Mom? Don't they care about us? I told her, I don't know, honey, but they sure are missing out. Pine Forge is the oldest building in our district, and it's not even close to being considered modernized. But my kids don't need a shiny building, the newest look, because looks don't mean anything. Our school shines because of the teachers and the staff that are inside that building. I don't want the future children of this district to miss out on experiencing what my kids have
30
experienced.
seconds left.
Will there be positions in the district for these teachers and staff members if they close Pine Forge? Will you let exceptional teachers go, or will they be quietly forced to leave due to the lack of open spots within the district? I feel that we have lost so many due to the unknown. I'm very proud of our teachers who have chosen not to put a price tag on our children's education. Thank you.
Okay, currently up now will be Nathan Yorgi, and followed by, and I don't have a full name here, it's Lisa DPLP222 at Comcast.net. So I don't have a full name. So if Lisa's in the house, you're in the queue.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I actually want to kind of pivot a little bit because I know as many of you feel, I don't think we're talking about a decision that's going to be based out of logic. I firmly believe we're talking about a decision that's going to be based out of an agenda. And there's some folks on the board that have had an agenda for years. And we know it, and we vote every time, and we talk about this. There's a small group of them that this has been their agenda. I don't know what the agenda is. I don't know why they have the agenda. The logic that all of you have spoken about, that I'm going to speak about, that I've spoken about at other board meetings, I appreciate your corporate experience. I have the same corporate experience doing right sizing. We heard about this as about right sizing. That's BS. It's not about right sizing because we have a financial problem that is so big that no amount of closing a school is going to solve that. You first need a strategic plan. And so we've gone through all of that. But I think what I want all of us to hear is the district has a data problem. They present us with data that isn't actual data. It's data that's driven by an agenda. The real data, when looked at, shows you keep the school open. You continue to find the levers to pull that allow you to fix your financial house, and then we move forward. So the question for all of us is, what are we going to do in November? I don't think that we have any chance because the small agenda, the small group of board members that have this agenda have enough pull to be able to make this decision with the rest of the board members that we know have outright said they're not going to vote for it to make it happen. So the question for all of us is, what are we going to do? Thankfully, we do have a voice, and that voice is we vote in November, and then we look for individuals who are going to make this something that when they get on the board, they just flip, because this decision doesn't need to be final. We know it's not a right decision, but it's a decision that most likely is going to be made. So the question to each of you to think about between now and November is, how are you going to vote? How will you get more engaged? And I'm guilty of this too, because I don't really go to the meetings where we hear from the prospective board members. Shame on me if I had a couple of these board members that have been very clearly said, oh, this is what I'm going to do if Pine Forge comes up on the block. I wouldn't have voted for them. So that's the opportunity we have. We have an opportunity to get more information, to find out who's coming up, because there are 6 of these members that are up for re-election. Maybe enough to change. That quorum that wants to close, they still may have enough, but it gives us an opportunity, because I'm looking now for options. Continuing to speak up here isn't really an option because they're not listening. They've made their decision. So hopefully that helps. Get engaged.
30 seconds left.
Make decisions in November that will hopefully allow us to be on a different trajectory than we are now.
Okay, Lisa, if you would please state your name, and then in the queue is Sally Stetler.
So I'm Lisa Piquel, and I did sign up online, and then I was told it didn't go through, so you will still see my name in the write-ins from earlier today, so you can just scratch that off. Dr. Bedden always says we are one district, and I agree with that statement. If the board closes Pine Forge, it'll affect us as a district. Closing Pine Forge is not an option. If we close Pine Forge, we could use the staff to fill vacancies within the district, which is great. We could save money to go back in the district, which is also great. But what I fail to see is how closing Pine Forge will benefit our children. We don't have the money to build a new school where the growth is. We really need to utilize the resources we have, not close a resource down. We don't need a quick fix that will leave us worrying about what our growth issue again is in a few years. If we close Pine Forge, that resource is gone, and I feel we'll be digging ourselves into a bigger hole, and our children will suffer because of this. Trust when I say I want the best for our children. I truly believe low student-teacher ratios and personal attention are important factors in our child's growth. Every child learns a little differently, so yes, some may not be affected by the large classrooms, but don't we want to do the best for all of our children? Don't we want them all to succeed? To me, higher student-teacher ratios means less individual attention, more disruptions, and more things being missed. We pride ourselves in being a great school district, but if you look at the other great school districts, They all have low student-teacher ratios. I know this is a tough decision. Neither scenario is a fix-all, but I beg the board, even if you've already made up your mind, please rewind, look at all the data and public comments again before coming to your final decision in November. Thank you.
Okay, up now is Sally Stetler, and in the queue is Veronica Reiner.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm not part of any group. When I signed up and they asked me why I was here, I said I'm a citizen. I am a Boyertown graduate, class of '67. I attended Pine Forge Elementary. I'm very proud of that. I spent 39 years as an educator, retiring from Albright College as an assistant dean of students. I've always, in all the things I did in education, I always felt the most important thing, and I was both an instructor and an administrator, was to keep the students first in your mind. I don't really have a prepared statement. I had sent Dr. Bedden a couple questions, some of which I could not get the answers to because my eyes aren't that good, I don't know whose are. But some of them may have been somewhat addressed. There were a lot of facts and figures tonight. I'm not sure that I heard enough as an educator, a lifetime educator, to say that I feel like the students are being placed first in this decision. One of my questions was, what kind of repairs and upgrades have been done to other elementary schools in the past 5 years? It seems like, admittedly, from the district, since before 2012, Pine Forge has been on the chopping block. So was there deferred maintenance that should have been done by a responsible administration to keep this building up to date so that you're not looking at the millions of dollars you're looking at? I don't know what there's other elementary schools. I would venture to say that possibly they got some more money invested than Pine Forge had. My other question I had was about busing. I grew up on what was then Old Reading Pike, Old Philadelphia Pike in Douglas Township, right across from Gonchahonee Park. And I can't imagine, I know what it was when I was in school, how long it took to get to Boyertown or any other school district. I think it's detrimental for children to spend so much time on a school bus. That's not really an educational experience, usually. And I would think most of your bus drivers and transportation people would also back that up. So that was another question I had. I feel like the people in Douglas Township, those children, I would hate to see a kindergarten student spend almost
30 seconds left
on the bus as they did in their classroom. The express service sounds great, but that doesn't sound too cost effective to me. So I hope you will look at everything. Last thing, I can't understand why this has to be done before the election. That made no sense to me whatsoever. It seems like, as the previous speaker said, why is the time frame it has to be done before there's a new school board elected if it's not like the building's going to blow up?
Time's up.
Thank you.
Okay, now up is Veronica Reiner, and in the queue is Heather Blessing.
Good evening. My name is Veronica Reinert. My address is 422 Old Philadelphia Pike, Douglasville. My family has a long history at Pine Forge. I've stated this in the past. My mother-in-law attended Pine Forge. My husband attended Pine Forge. My sons attended Pine Forge. And now the children that he is raising will attend Pine Forge. Pine Forge was my place of employment for 29 years until my retirement in 2018. I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Pine Forge, and the closeness and feel that a small school has is unforgettable. In my years working at Pine Forge, you have no idea how many children I served lunch to and how many of their children I did serve lunch to. And I don't want to serve to the grandchildren, that's why I retired. They like They, like my family, love the area and community, and they decided to raise their families here. This is one reason why the thought of closing Pine Forge is very upsetting. And that's another reason why our area isn't growing, because the families are staying here. Another reason that is upsetting is the possible loss of the Robin Carter Scholarship Fund. For those who do not know about this, I will tell you. Robin Carter was an aide who worked at Pine Forge. Her husband attended Pine Forge, and so did her children and nieces. December 10th, 2015, she passed away from pancreatic cancer. In lieu of flowers, she asked people to donate for her scholarship fund. This was the first year for this fund. This year will be the 4th year that her husband will hold the fundraiser. Robin loved Pine Forge, and she felt it was important for children to further their education. She made sure her children did exactly that. This fund was available only to students from Pine Forge. If the school closes this funding is no longer available, it will be a loss to the students from Pine Forge that the scholarship fund would benefit. Also, it will be interesting to see how you split the students up. After reading the articles in the Boyertown Times and looking at the enrollment numbers, Earl can take about 100 of our kids. Colbertville about 60, and Boyertown Elementary could actually take all of the students, but then that would put them
30 seconds left.
I would rather see my tax dollars go to fixing Pine Forge. Some of the repairs to the school have been a problem for more than 2 to 3 years. That I know. Perhaps if they were fixed when they were first discovered, the problems would not have gotten out of control. Kind of sounds like Bear Stadium. Of course, it doesn't matter what I feel and what others feel. We all know that down the line, when you close, if you close Pine Forge, possibly Earl, you will build a new elementary school that you all want.
Okay, up is Heather Blessing, and in the queue is Jim Brophy.
So as the previous speaker spoke about the stadium, I was here early this evening and listening to the conversations, and they talked about the money that was raised for a naming for an individual for the stadium. Why not raise money for Pine Forge? That school deserves that much. If you can put all that effort into a stadium, why not the teachers? A school that love the children that are there. I have a special needs child. He has social and emotional development issues. Going to a larger class, it's not helping him. Putting him on the bus, your supposed express bus, let me tell you, your express bus is probably BS. Because my son, as it now stands, is at school for 20 minutes before bus 71 takes him home every day. He gets home at 4:15. School lets out, 3:25. He sits there 20 minutes with his teacher. 20 minutes. Is that going to happen when he goes to the next school? Is it fair to the teachers that they have to leave where they are and go into other areas and then potentially be in the same position again in maybe 5 years because you need another school? Because the Montgomery County portion of Boyertown School District keeps on building. Why don't the taxes over there should be more than the taxes over here? You're just worried about Berks County and you have Montgomery County. There's 2 different areas. Montgomery County should be part and responsible for their development, for their payment, for their school. A new school costs more than fixing Pine Forge. A $5,000 shed, I'm sure you could ask the parents to donate time to build a shed, because I would donate my time, hands down. You should really think about all the things you want to do for potentially in 5 years a new school that you could be putting into a school that's there, you own. There's plenty of opportunity there. You're disservicing children with special needs, regular children who don't have those special needs. You're putting them waking up earlier, putting them on a bus earlier. You know, there's so many things that you're just not giving them. You're gonna put them into a larger class, I can tell you now. My kid's gonna suffer. He doesn't need a special education class. He needs a regular class where he has the opportunity to grow and not be in a class of 30. Because my previous son was in Pottstown. When he was there, we left to come to Boyertown because they were closing one of their schools and redid another school, and now they're in contracts talking
30
about
seconds
potentially
left.
opening up that school that they closed. It's history repeating itself now that I'm in Boyertown. Should I leave Boyertown? I don't want to, but it's something I always think about because now I'm watching history repeat itself, and we teach our kids not to let that happen.
Okay, up now is Jim Brophy, and in the queue is Chris Nyman.
A lot of smart people here tonight that did a lot of homework. I'm impressed. Okay. Good evening, school board members, Dr. Benton, and the people of the Boyertown School District community, which is what they all are. It's not just Pine Forge, this is the school community. My name's Jim Brophy. I live in Douglasville, Berks County, and thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm here to voice my thoughts on the Pine Forge Elementary School Closure Initiative. That's what it is. That's where we're going. I'll be primarily addressing Dr. Benton since he is the face of this. So this is where I'll try and talk to, and I have little things to say there. Dr. Benton, in a previous board meeting, you mentioned that your goal was a united school district, one where everyone believes they are being treated fairly and equitably. This is indeed an admirable goal, and I fully support that. I think 100% that's the greatest thing you could possibly do. However, Dr. Benton, words are just words. Actions are intentions, and perceptions are reality, and you're seeing that tonight. At the same meeting that you said that, you also mentioned that you wanted to get this process done while this board was impaneled and not wait for anything to move forward. The second statement is kind of disturbing. The present board majority has shown a visible bias over the years toward the closure of the Pine Forge School. And that leads to a perception that this process we are entering right now is merely smoke and that it's being used to just satisfy procedural requirement and that the decision's already made. This is a perception problem which I speak of. And your goal of uniting the district will be kind of hard if that happens. In business, when you see a problem, which I see, you offer a solution. I have a solution. That's what I'm here to talk about. There's an election in November. Some of the candidates have been clear on their support of the closure, and some have been very clear that they do not support the closure of the school. So saying that, my solution is simple. Dr. Benton, with a decision of this magnitude, when you need to weigh what you feel is the best interest of the district versus the best interest of the 250
30 seconds left.
students, let the voting population help. They're pretty smart. Let them take some of the weight off your shoulders. By who they vote in, will tell you who they want. Now, if they vote in the candidates that want to close it, that's one thing you can say I have majority support, and people are okay with closing a school at the same time we're building a $7 million or $6 million stadium. And if they don't support it, they'll vote in the people that obviously don't want to close it.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Okay, now up is Chris Nyman, and in the queue is Ruth Levan.
Good evening. I wanted to make sure, as a board member, that all of us who received Dawn Keebler's note, she sent it to all board members and administration, a letter. So I'm going to make sure that gets put as part of tonight's meeting. Okay, now for me. As a board member, I asked to make a decision on Pine Forge to close it. However, I have asked on 3 occasions for classroom utilization by all elementary schools. To date, I have not received. I ask why. Why does this administration and board majority afraid to give me this information? As of tonight, going through this information that we were handed right before we came here, I saw a letter from Douglas Burks to the school board dated March 22nd, 2019. I checked several of our newsletters from March 22nd, 29th, April 5th, April 12th, and did not find that the board was notified. Is this transparency and honest to this board, or to the majority of the board, or let's even say the minority of the board, because I'm sure the majority knew? Let's remember, we are here for the students. The building does not educate our students. Our great, great teachers educate. We don't need a Taj Mahal to teach our students. We need the teachers. Let's keep Pine Forge open.
Okay, now up is Ruth Levan, and in the queue is Lisa Pickle. If I said that right.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. As reported in the Reading Eagle, one reason for this meeting could not wait was because of a possible new board would be voted into office. Some of the current board members who have constantly approved more spending on projects like choosing a stadium over upgrading Pine Forge Elementary. Let's try to deal with one mistake before another is created. Allow the possible new board to make this decision. I have lived in the Boyertown district all my life. I grew up in the farthest Berks County corner of the district. If I lived 1/2 mile in either direction, I could have gone to Pottsgrove or Daniel Boone. If we close Pine Forge, our children will be spending more time on the bus. I see this as very unhealthy. I remember those long bus rides to the senior high. When my children were to attend elementary school, they were either going to be bused to Pine Forge, Boyertown, or Earl. Did I worry? No, because I knew that any school in the Boyertown area school district could have the right fit for my children because of the awesome, dedicated teachers in our buildings. I was very happy that my children were able to attend Pine Forge. It was my school. It was the school where my mother taught for 25 years. It was the right fit for my children because it was a small school setting where everything was outstanding, kind, warm, a nurturing environment for children. I have witnessed other schools close: Washington, Lincoln, Little Ole, Valley, Congo, the old Coberdale School. I have either attended or worked in practically every building in this school district. I know it's not an easy decision to make. Instead of closing Pine Forge, has anyone ever looked to moving the regular education students from Coberdale to Boyertown Elementary? We are talking blocks, not miles to travel. Coberdale Elementary could become an education center with an emphasis of learning support. Wouldn't this make more sense, since the special education department is well funded and could afford to make some changes? Also, I was embarrassed.
30 seconds left.
Disappointed when I read in the Reading Eagle that our district did not respond to what's new in the Berks Public Schools this year. Are we here tonight only to go through the motions? Has it already been decided to close the school? Nothing new. Yes, this is an emotional time for some of us. Unfortunately for some, closing the school just so others can get what they want is so unhealthy. I've heard it. Berks County schools don't give the same opportunities to the kids in Montgomery County. This is so unfounded and so cruel.
Okay, now up is Lisa Pickle, followed by Dave Watkins in the queue. Okay. So we have Dave Watkins, and in the queue is Gloria, looks like Barnes.
It's Dale Watkins. I'm Dale.
Thank you. Dale Watkins is up. Thank you.
Okay, I had 2 daughters who are alumni from Pine Forge, and I have 4 grandchildren in Earl right now. And with all the construction of the homes being built on the other side of Route 100, right now, I highly doubt that they are all 55 and over communities. So we're going to be in need of an elementary school, and you want to close Pine Forge. I'd like you to consider putting the money into renovating that school. You have a very nice property there with a good foundation, and it will cost a lot less to renovate that school than it will for you to buy land and build a brand new school within the next 3 to 5 years. And mark my words, you will be back here in the next 3 to 5 years telling us all that we need a new elementary school.
Okay, I believe it's Gloria. What is it?
Bayness.
Okay. And followed.
Speak about school being built in 1928. It's funny, I have an uncle, had an uncle, an aunt, and my father, who started in 1936 there. I entered that school in 1957, along with my sister in first grade. In 1988, my daughter started Pine Forge School. In 2018, my grandson entered kindergarten there. 4 generations. And you want to close the school down. Shame on you. Shame.
Okay, next up is Ivory Lacey, and in the queue is David Moyer. So Ivory Lacey.
This is why we should not shut down Pine Forge, because we have these wonderful teachers here, a great principal, especially the teachers for IEP that have helped me since 2nd grade with my reading and writing, also my speech. With closing Pine Forge affects a lot of families and students. Closing the school will fill the other elementary school with too many students, and some students will not be able to get the help they need. With more students in the classroom, This is why you shouldn't close Pine Forge. Think about the students, not the money. Thank you.
Okay, we have, and this is the last person signed up tonight, Mr. David Moyer.
Good evening. I didn't go away, I'm still here. Hey, I paid my $7,000 for taxes this year too, and I paid them right after I got them in the mail. How do you like that? Well, I still have the money. Anyway, I'm an elected official in Washington Township. We have 300 homes going to come in there right shortly that a builder's proposing to build. Plus, there's 250 down the street here in Montgomery County that are going to go where Zerns was, plus a bunch of other ones. To the doctor, superintendent, thank you. You told them that we have a problem. It's called spending. What is it with you guys? You just like to keep spending money? Look, I'm 57, I'm out of debt for 20 years, and I'm not, because I still pay my school taxes, and it keeps going up every year and every year and every year. I had family that attended Pine Forge. I have people that work here for the school district that I talk to on a regular basis. Maybe you better start taking care of these buildings instead of letting them go to pot. When was the last time you did anything to Pine Forge? It looks awful on the outside. I talked to some of the educators there. You haven't done anything. Then you're proposing all kinds of outlandish spending for the air conditioning, the roof. When you don't do anything, that's what happens. You all have a house. If you lived next to me and you kept it like you do Pine Forge, I'd rip about it. I'd be on you. I'd have a note. I'd have a sign in your yard next to mine because it don't fly. Look, I look around this building, we spent millions. I mean millions. When I'm talking millions, I'm talking we're probably at a high school budget of what, over 100 million now? And I look at this building and I talk to some of the custodians, and you know what they say? We don't have the help. Because you know why? Because this board, and you know who you are, voted to only pay the starting help 10, 11 bucks an hour. What a kid makes. How you expect to keep something up? Yous all make more than $10 an hour. I talked to Jeff over there and Frank over there, the custodians over at Pine Forge. You limited them. You don't give them the help. You don't give them the resources. I talked to some of the
30 seconds left.
You don't give them the computers they need for their kids. Yeah. And then Douglas Burke sends you a letter, and then you don't talk to, you send it to certain people on the board, and you don't send it to all of them. What are you holding back? Our superintendent said it well. You guys got a spending problem, and in November we're going to change it. Get it? Don't forget who I am. I'm coming back. I got time.
Time's up.
We have completed the public comment portion of the hearing, and as a result, we have fulfilled the agenda that's required of us under Section 780 of the School Code, and a motion to adjourn this particular proceeding would be in order, after which time the board will be reviewing all of the public comments that were made this evening, as well as written testimony that will be submitted prior to the board vote in November. Motion to adjourn and second would be in order. Mr. Lewis makes a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second, Donnie Savage. The meeting is adjourned.